Do you remember the exact moment the world realized it was fragile? What if I told you that a single ship could stop your entire world in its tracks? I don't mean the slow onset of a pandemic or the sudden crash of a stock market ticker. I am talking about a specific Tuesday morning in March 2021, when the wind blew just a little too hard across the Egyptian sands. On that day, a ship named the Ever Given ceased to be a vessel and became a weapon. To understand the scale, you have to visualize it. This ship is 400 meters long. If you stood it upright, it would tower over the Eiffel Tower. It weighs 220,000 tons. It is a floating city, carrying the contents of 20,000 semi-trucks on its back. And in a matter of seconds, this engineering marvel was defeated by a gust of wind and a phenomenon known as the bank effect. The ship swung. It wedged itself diagonally across the Suez Canal. The result was immediate silence. The jugular vein of global trade had been severed. For 6 days, humanity watched in disbelief as a single metal object held the entire global economy hostage. We weren't just watching a boat stuck in the mud. We were watching $400 million evaporate every single hour. One ship, one mistake, billions at stake. That is $6.7 million vanishing every minute. But the true horror wasn't the lost money. It was the realization that our entire modern way of life hangs by a thread so thin we had forgotten it was even there.
This is Finance Beyond Seas. We explore the moments where the currents of maritime history and the tides of the global economy collide. We're here to navigate the wreckage of the past, to find the financial lessons that will protect you today. We analyze history and systems, not futures. Nothing presented here is financial advice. It is purely historical and economic commentary.
To understand why a single stuck ship can threaten your ability to buy a toaster or drive a car, we have to go back in time. We need to look at how the world worked before it became frictionless. Before the 1950s, shipping was an art form, but it was a chaotic, expensive, and slow one. If you wanted to move coffee from Brazil to a warehouse in France, armies of strong men, stevedores, had to manually carry sacks from the dock into the hull of a ship. They played a game of 3D Tetris with barrels, crates, and bags. Theft was rampant. Goods were damaged. Ships sat in ports for weeks just waiting to be loaded. It was the bottleneck of the industrial age. Then, an American trucking magnate named Malcolm McLean looked at this chaos and had the most boring idea in history: the box. He didn't invent a new engine or a new fuel. He invented a standardized steel container. It sounds dull, but this was magic. Suddenly, a factory in Shanghai could load a box that fit perfectly onto a truck, which fit perfectly onto a train, which fit perfectly onto a ship, and then onto another truck in Hamburg. No one had to touch the product inside.
This triggered the era of hyper-globalization. The cost of shipping plummeted by over 90% almost overnight. Distance became irrelevant. It became cheaper to catch a fish in Scotland, ship it to China to be filleted, and ship it back to Scotland to be sold than to just fillet it in Scotland. We conquered geography. But in doing so, we became addicted to a system that required absolute, clockwork precision to survive. This brings us to the invisible engine running our world and the second villain of our story. It is a philosophy born in the factories of Toyota, known as just-in-time, JIT. In the old days, factories had massive warehouses filled with months' worth of steel, rubber, and chips. It was a safety net. But in the eyes of modern accountants, a warehouse full of parts is waste. It is money sitting on the floor doing nothing. So the corporate world adopted a new religion: efficiency. The goal of just-in-time is to have the steering wheel arrive at the car factory exactly 60 seconds before it needs to be bolted onto the car. It is a beautiful mathematical ballet. It freed up billions of dollars in capital, but it came with a hidden cost that no one calculated. We stripped the system of its fat, but we also stripped it of its muscle. We created an anorexic supply chain. There is zero slack, no buffer, no backup plan. This is what systems theorists call brittle efficiency. The system is optimized for perfection, but the world is not perfect. When the Ever Given blocked the canal, or when a factory in Malaysia shuts down due to a virus, the bullwhip effect kicks in.
A tiny delay at the start of the chain amplifies into a catastrophe by the time it reaches you. A 3-day delay in shipping doesn't just mean your package is late, it means a factory in Germany halts production because it's missing one specific screw. We traded resilience for profit, assuming that nothing would ever go wrong again. We were wrong. You might think the Ever Given was a freak accident, a black swan event that won't happen again. But if you look at the map today, the warning lights are flashing red everywhere. The choke points are failing. Look at the Panama Canal. It is one of the greatest engineering feats of mankind, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific. But unlike the Suez, which is at sea level, the Panama Canal runs on fresh water. It requires millions of gallons of water from Gaetan Lake to lift ships over the mountains. But climate change has brought a historic drought. The lake is drying up. The world depends on water, and it's running out. Right now, the canal authorities have had to slash the number of ships allowed to pass. We are seeing a desperate auction, where shipping companies are paying millions of dollars just to skip the line, while others wait for weeks. The physical fuel of global trade, water, is running out.
Or look at the Red Sea. The Bab al-Mandeb Strait is a narrow gate, only about 20 miles wide, that guards the entrance to the Suez Canal. Recently, geopolitical tensions and missile attacks from local militias have turned this water into a war zone. Major shipping giants like Maersk have done the unthinkable. They have rerouted their fleets around the entire continent of Africa. We have literally reverted to 19th century trade routes. This detour adds 10 days and $1 million in fuel to every single journey. Every time a ship takes the long way, the capacity of the global fleet shrinks, prices at your grocery store tick up, and the just-in-time schedule shatters. We thought we had conquered nature and politics with our technology, but geography is fighting back, and it is winning. So, why do we keep doing this? Why do we keep building bigger ships and funneling them through these tiny, dangerous canals? The answer lies in the ruthless logic of economies of scale. Over the last 20 years, an arms race has taken place on the high seas. Shipping companies realized that a ship carrying 24,000 containers is mathematically cheaper to run per pair of sneakers than a ship carrying 5,000. So, they built monsters. These Megamax vessels are efficient, yes, but they are also clumsy. They are so large they can barely fit into ports. They require massive cranes that only a few wealthy cities can afford. Bigger ships, bigger risks. One breakdown can stop the planet. This has created a strategic trap. By making ships bigger to save pennies on the dollar, we have forced global trade into fewer and fewer hub ports and fewer potential routes. We have centralized the risk. If a small ship breaks down, it's a nuisance. If a Megamax ship breaks down, it's a macroeconomic crisis. Governments and corporations made a gamble. They bet on a world of eternal peace, stable weather, and open borders. They optimized their strategy for the best-case scenario because it was the most profitable path. But in doing so, they created a system where a single failure point, a single choked canal, can trigger a cascade of failure across the entire planet. They confused motion with progress, building a system that moves fast but cannot handle a bump in the road. This feels like a modern problem, but history whispers a terrifying warning. We have been here before. Consider the late Bronze Age, around 1200 BC. This was a time of incredible globalization for the ancient world. The Egyptians, Hittites, and Mycenaeans were all connected by a complex web of trade. Their entire technology relied on bronze, which is an alloy of copper and tin. Copper was common, but tin? Tin was rare. It had to be shipped from thousands of miles away through specific trade routes. Tin was the semiconductor of the ancient world. You couldn't run an army or an economy without it. Then, a series of systemic shocks hit. A megadrought, earthquakes, and the mysterious sea peoples disrupting trade routes. The tin stopped flowing. The complex supply chain snapped. It didn't just cause a recession, it caused a total societal collapse. Palaces were burned, writing systems were forgotten, and civilization entered a dark age that lasted for centuries.
The lesson is stark. Complexity breeds fragility. The more interconnected a system becomes, the more spectacular its collapse. We are not immune just because we have Wi-Fi. We rely on Taiwanese chips and Middle Eastern oil just as much as the ancients relied on Afghan tin. We are walking the same tightrope, just at a much greater height. If the dangers are so obvious,
Why don't we fix it? Why don't we build more redundancy, more warehouses, more diverse routes? The answer lies in the feedback loop of the consumer economy. You and I are part of the problem. We have been trained to expect instant gratification. When we click Buy Now, we expect the package on our doorstep tomorrow, and we expect shipping to be free. To meet this impossible demand, companies must cut every corner possible. Resilience is expensive. Holding inventory is expensive. Using smaller, safer ships is expensive. If a CEO decides to spend billions making their supply chain collapse-proof, their competitor will undercut their prices and put them out of business. The market punishes safety and rewards risk. This creates a race to the bottom in terms of security. We are locked in a cycle where we keep stretching the rubber band tighter and tighter to squeeze out a little more efficiency, ignoring the fact that the band is about to snap. The Straits of Malacca, Hormuz, Gibraltar, these aren't just lines on a map. They are the valves of the global heart. We are pumping blood through them at higher and higher pressures while the arteries are hardening. The system perpetuates itself because the cost of fixing it requires a fundamental change in how we consume, and nobody is ready to pay that bill. Here is the paradox that defines our time. We live in a digital age. We talk about the cloud, the metaverse, and AI. We think of our economy as something weightless, invisible, and instant. But the Ever Given showed us the lie. There is no cloud. The cloud is just a server rack in a building, and that server rack is made of metal that was mined in Africa, refined in Australia, and shipped through the Suez Canal on a diesel-burning boat. Our digital lives are held up by a purely physical, heavy, and dirty industrial skeleton. We have built a civilization that feels like science fiction, but it relies on Victorian-era logistics. The 200 meters of water in the Suez Canal matters more to your life than the algorithm on your phone screen. If that canal chokes, the digital world goes dark. We haven't escaped the physical world, we've just become better at ignoring it.